everybody, Caleb here in the Rosa String Works workshop. Today we've got this 78 or 79 Yamaha. You can probably tell it's set up pretty well already. So it's not so much in for a setup as it is for some cosmetic work. The headstock is definitely the worst part of this. You can see there. It's all sorts of beat up, chewed up. So not a whole lot of setup work to be done here. It's really fairly well set up. Plays real well, sounds real good. So I'm going to start by getting the strings off of here. We'll take a look at some of the things we need to do once I get it on the table and the strings off. So I've been looking this over. Now that I got the strings off of it, I can take a look at the saddle, and it actually fits really tight. I think it's plastic, but considering it fits really tight and it was intonated well, I'm not going to do anything about it, I don't think. Now on the other end, the nut is broken. You can see it there. Piece is chipped out, so we'll have to replace the nut, but it's kind of nice that, you know, I know that this is exactly the size I need because it was set up really well with this nut. So I'll have to knock that off of there. I think we're going to replace the tuners with some that match the guitar a little bit better. So I'm going to take them off, and I'm going to have to take them off anyway to fix some of the damage on the headstock. So probably the next thing I'll do is take these tuners off and bag them up and set them aside. You can see how torn up it is. All sorts of little damage in there. We're going to have to get a little creative with how we're going to fix these. And the one other big thing, I guess, is right here. There's kind of a separation in between this plastic piece and the plastic binding, and it's not looking great. So we're going to see what we can do to make this look a little bit better. I don't know how well you can see it. There, I guess maybe you can. And then pretty much the last thing is there's just a lot of scratches in it, and we're going to try to work some of those out one way or another. So mostly just cosmetic work. On one hand, that's good because there's nothing majorly wrong with this guitar, but on the other hand, cosmetic work can be kind of difficult. I think the first thing I'm going to do is just get those tuners off. I guess I'll get what I need to do that. I'm going to need a wrench and a screwdriver, and I got a screwdriver, but I don't have the wrench. So I'll get that all together.
Have you ever been to Richmond in November when the cold Virginia rain is pouring down? My friends, I'm here to tell you there's no pleasure when you're all alone and a stranger to this town.
So I've got the tuners off. I bagged them up. What I'm doing now is I'm going through and I'm just kind of drop filling some spots on the top of this guitar. So I got the light close so I can see all the real big divots. I think this should work well to get it, you know, a little more even so we can buff it out and some of them should disappear. I'm just using the clear brushing lacquer on a little paintbrush. Alright, so what we've decided to do with this biggest damaged part is to basically just route it out and put a new piece of mahogany in. We've already got a nice piece of mahogany here. It's just going to go right about in this area. It's kind of hard to show you, but we're going to basically draw a line across here, route that out to maybe half the thickness of the headstock, basically till it's almost gone. And everything's square and flat, and then we'll cut that, you know, the opposite piece out of here, put it in, should match up real good. You can see I've got a fence. The guitar is clamped down to the table. I'm basically just going to run this in here. That's looking good, and then I'll just take out the rest. Something I thought about before I got started here was the most surface area on the flat of this is on this side, so I put that towards the, you know, rest of the headstock, what it's going to be sitting on, so that I will hopefully maintain the most surface area and keep it as flat as I can get. I think we're good to go, though. I think everything's clamped in and nothing's going to go majorly wrong. I'm going to take a super shallow cut. You know, we're talking like taking the finish off of it. trying to get the depth set before I go. I want to be just barely sitting on there. You know, scratching the finish, that's what I want. And I'm not quite there yet. So you can see the line I scratched in it right there. So basically everything on this side of the line, we're gonna route it out so it's flat, so we can fit a filler piece in. I think we'll give her a shot.
Don't take me wrong, I do like East Virginia, and Richmond's full of hospitality, except for one Virginia girl I know of, who made a perfect love wreck out of me. Blue, blue, Virginia blue, there's no blue like blue, Virginia blues, and no other girls in the whole wide world will break your heart like Virginia girls. There's no blue like blue, Virginia blues.
Well, I think we're deep enough now, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop cutting on it. I've already got the fence off of here. It's looking pretty good. I'll try to get it around where you can see it. There, that should give you an idea about what that looks like. It's nice and even across there, so I think we should be able to get a piece good and tight in there so you won't even be able to feel it. The biggest thing now is getting a piece cut at this angle and matching this grain line. Got some cleaning up to do, so I'm going to get the area cleaned up and my carpet back down, and I can start looking at doing that. I've pretty much got this cleaned up. We've got this new piece of mahogany here that I've already cut the angle on, and it's looking like it's fitting pretty well. I'm not real sure how I can show you. It's lining up pretty good. It's kind of hard to show you because I got the whole rest of the guitar to deal with. I'm pretty happy with it. And it's oversized. Jerry had the idea, cut it extra long. That way if I needed to go back to the sander and change the angle slightly to make sure the grain was straight, I could do that. And I think it's looking pretty good. Well, I've gone ahead and cut this down. Jerry suggested one little move to get the grain a little bit more aligned. And also, he suggested cutting it in half so it was a little closer to thickness, and that way I actually had two choices. But I think we're real happy with this. This is still oversized all the way around, which is good, because that gives me a little bit of play in location, so that it's not, you know, going to be undersized. But I think it's looking good. I think my next step is to glue it in. I'm going to have Jerry take a look at this one more time before I go doing that. I just noticed this corner is very sharp. Sharp no more. So we're not too far off gluing that piece in there. That's kind of what it's going to look like. It's still just a touch tall. We're talking 20 thousandths sheet of paper. Well, maybe 2 sheets of paper. I'll see what Jerry thinks. Alright, so we're ready to glue this thing in. That's probably too much, but that's okay. I've got just a touch of overhang all the way around, a little more up here, but the fact that it is overhanging everywhere means that it will fit. And it's pressed up against the joint in the back of the headstock, flat edge, and that's probably the most important part right now, because you really don't want to see that seam as much as you wouldn't get rid of it. So this will set up for a while. Give some time to totally dry. I'm real happy with that. That's looking good. Well, this Yamaha sat up, clamped up for over a week over Christmas. It's definitely in there. I've already started shaving it down and making it fit a little bit better. I used the finger plane on the top of it to knock off the bulk of what I wanted off, and then I've been using this rougher rasp and my much finer file to get, you know, the edges and the top a little bit flatter. But the last thing I'm going to do is trying to find a good piece of sandpaper. I'm just going to do some sanding. I am going to overlap the finish a bit to help blend it all together. But all in all, it's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand this till I'm happy with it and kind of blend it in with the finish, because right now there's really no lip there. It just kind of transitions. But I'm going to do that, make sure it does that all the way around every place it joins. There's still a little bit of a lip right there on that corner where there's some damage. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard to get the guitar where you can see it well. But I'm going to try to get this all sanded out. It should be nice and well blended. Well, you can see here I've sanded this and kind of around the area where I'm going to need some color. You can kind of see what it's going to look like if I get it wet. And there you can see it's looking good, but it doesn't quite match in color. But here's another piece of the same mahogany, but I used the light brown on it, and it's pretty close. Actually, it's gotten lighter since I've not touched it. There you can see it's a pretty good place to start. At least it's getting me close, and I'll probably use that on this as well as these little spots where I'm gonna just finish over them. That way they'll blend in a little bit better. It's starting to look pretty good. Well, I started working on dye on the back of this headstock here. The other thing I did was we ordered new tuners for this, so I went ahead and just filled all the old tuner holes with little bits of mahogany, some glue. It's all flush now, so it feels real good, and I think it looks a lot better. They don't draw your eye as much. You can probably also tell I've started dyeing all the little damaged parts, because they really don't draw your eye as much. They blend in a lot better. I've also dyed the big piece of mahogany we stuck in here, and it's looking pretty good, you know. Always hope for better, but it's not looking too bad. I'll try to show you the end of the headstock. That's where most of the damage was. It's not looking too bad. The only spots I'm really worried about now are actually right here and here, where there's more chunks taken out than just kind of worn down. But for up here, it's really looking a whole lot better. I think with a little bit of lacquer, you may not notice those as much. It may just look like more wear and less like damage. We're getting where we're going. I think I'm going to see what I can't do about these. Well, you can see I've started working on finish on the back of this headstock on this Yamaha. I've just been rushing on some lacquer and a few coats at a time. Right now I'm really just trying to hit the new spot because I'm still feeling the grain. It's not a whole lot more than that. And then just give it some time to sit up. So I'll let this dry for a while and do it again probably. So I've had a few coats on this Yamaha here, and I've started sanding it back. I think I'm just about done with it. You can see it's starting to look pretty good. It feels really smooth. There's definitely no transition there. Well, barring the little interruptions I just had, I actually did get this kind of polished up. I'm taking a clean cloth and wiping it down. I did take it to the buffing wheel and tried to buff it. It looks pretty good on the camera, I think. It looks alright. I think I'm going to end up waxing it. At least the back of the headstock, which is kind of weird to wax the back of the headstock. But I do think it's going to make it look good. I will end up doing the front of the headstock as well. It looks really good, I think. That side there. That's obviously the more important side, being the front, but I have touched it up a little bit, so I think waxing it's going to be a good call. I did go ahead and polish up the rest of the body as well. I didn't really show a lot of it on camera, but I have been working on getting some of the scratches out. It's still not perfect, but it has to be improved. I drop filled a couple spots, sanded the whole thing a little bit, and then buffed it back out, and it's looking good, but it still looks like a well-used instrument. So I did the top, the sides, and the back. I buffed the whole thing while I was over at the wheel. So it probably needs some of the Renaissance wax as well. I think after I do that, I'm ready to start putting this thing back together. And if you remember, the one thing I do have to do is I have to make a new nut for this because the old one's broken. That's the only real setup thing I think this needs, because it was set up really well. All we were doing was really fixing that headstock damage there, and then seeing what we could clean up. So I think actually the first thing I'm going to do is make a new nut, get it fit, start working on putting this back together. I'll probably oil the fretboard. The frets look like they're in really good shape, so I'm not going to mess with them. You know, get the few things that I'm going to have to be moving around on here before I put the wax on, and the wax will be the last thing I do before I put the tuners back in, I think. So I've gone ahead and made a new nut. I gotta say, it's a lot easier to make a new one when you have an old one to compare to. And as a matter of fact, mine actually fits it a little bit better. The old one is just a touch short, whereas this actually goes out to the edge. Anyways, I need to get this glued on so I can put some string grooves in it. To do that, I'm just going to use a little bit of the super phatic glue, and I'll probably just use a piece of tape and tape it down for a little while. Alright, so I'm going to let that sit for just a little while. That super phatic glue sets up pretty quick, but that should help hold it in a little bit better. The next thing I'm going to do is start working on putting these tuners in. I'll zoom you in a little bit. We've got these new Grover tuners. They looked fairly nice, and they look like they'll actually go with the guitar, more like what was on it when it was new. They look a little bit more original than the gold kind of electric guitar tuners that were on it. I don't know why I'm having trouble opening this. I believe I have ferrules for these. Some that look kind of like what was in it. I'm not sure that the ones we took out, the ones that we took out were all electric and they were screwed into them. These ones are ones I'll drive in, and they look kind of original. I think they look original. They look like what I would expect to see on a Yamaha, especially of this age. So I'm going to go ahead and put these ferrules in. I'm supporting the bottom of the headstock with this hand, and then really I'm just pressing with the rim of the screwdriver. I'm not going to put them in any tighter than I can get with my hand. I don't want to go breaking anything. I think that looks like a correct Yamaha headstock. Now it's time to put the tuners on there. I'll make a little room. Got a lot of stuff on my desk right now. So something I forgot. Not a big deal, but I'm going to have to re-drill tuner holes, which means I'm going to need to make sure these are all lined up. So what I need to do now is make sure that these are in alignment with each other. So I'll probably get a straight edge. Got my metal ruler here, and I can run that along the sides. I think actually they look awful staggered. It may not be my best action. These tuners are a little smaller than the ones that were in it, so there's just a touch of play, which is why we need the screws. So it looks to me like the bottom screw holes actually line up with a screw hole that was already there. So it should be fairly easy. You see they just move as soon as I release them. The finish is awful smooth. It lets them slide pretty easy. So what I'm going to do, I think, is take my awl. I'll get these all lined up. I might use a piece of tape. That might actually help. Maybe a bigger straight edge. That's too big. Okay, so the straight edge it is. What I might do is I might take a piece of painter's tape and tape something down to help me hold these where I want them, which I think is there, pressed against my straight edge. I might have to take my straight edge down. The problem is it's just a little long. I need something shorter. but not tall enough that it hits pieces I don't want it to. I'm going to find a better straight edge. Alright, so here's what I ended up doing. I ended up taping down my straight edge, and then one at a time I'd push the tuner against the straight edge, and then I'd take my awl and mark the 2 spots. Now what I'm going to do, because I've already marked them all. Now what I'm going to do is, I've got the littlest drill bit I've got, and that is the right size for this. I have tested that on another piece, and I've got a little depth stop to show me where to stop, how deep to stop. I'm just going to go ahead and drill these. So my next step would be to take this off. The holes should be aligned, so I should be able to just start these screws. Now I'm not going to put these on, but just yet, because I still need to mark the other side, so I'll have to tape the straight edge back down. But it's looking good. I'm not going to film doing the other side, but I'm going to do exactly what I just did, but again. Well, I've started waxing the top of this guitar. I think I'm ready to put the strings on it. You might be able to see I've got the saddle in it and all the bridge pins. Now that the tuners are on it, I've already started nut slot, so you can't really see it. The nut slots are started so I can get an idea. The strings that we're going to use are these elixirs. These were requested by the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and get these on here. I'll bring you back once they're on, and maybe even up to pitch. I know that the nut's going to have to come down some more. I'm going to have to deepen the slots, but the only way to tell how much is to get these strings actually on there. Well, you can see I've got all 6 strings on there. And I got my tuner sitting here, and I'm starting to check the string height here at the nut. I've got my 18 thousandths pick, and you can see it's going in there real easy. No change, so that E string is still too high. So what I'll do is I'll just lower it and pitch so I can get it out of the slot. And I'll take the file for the right size. I'll take a little bit more off. And you might notice I'm angling this down because you want the string to go down at the angle, because you want the highest point to be on this side of the nut. Well, it's starting to get there. I'm still just a little ways off on that E string. The others have got a ways to go, and they're not all the way up to pitch yet, so I want to just get this close. I don't want to necessarily get this spot on yet. Because as the tension changes, the neck, the bow put into the neck from the tension changes. Alright, so that's good for that E string. Now I'll move on to the A and do a very similar procedure. Lower it in pitch so I can get it out of the slot. Get the right one for the A string. I had to go borrow Jerry's files because his are bigger than mine, and these elixirs are slightly thicker than I have my files for. Well, actually, the elixirs are almost the same size as the files I have, and we like to have them a little bit bigger. There's less chance of it getting caught in the nut that way. I can tell just by looking at, comparing it to the E string, that it needs to come up some more. Problem is my slots are getting kind of deep. Perfect. Try to get some of that dust out of there. I'm probably not going to record a whole lot more of this because it's a whole lot more of the same. So yeah, this is pretty much what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to get all the strings down to where they're, you know, buzzing off of that pick. And then what we'll do is we'll go back through and we'll shave a little bit off the top of the nut to make the slots not so deep. Well, I'm pretty sure this old Yamaha here is good to go. It has passed inspection through Jerry, so it's looking pretty good. So there you can see the headstock and the new nut and the new tuners. I think they look great on that old Yamaha. It's set up real well. The action is good and low, but not too low. There's the back of that headstock. That piece we had to replace is up here. It's looking real good. I'll show you the front of the guitar. There's still a little bit of dust clinging to it from polishing it, but I'll make sure to get rid of that before it leaves. But the last thing I'm going to do here is play this, and I forgot to tune it. So I'm going to tune it, and then I'm going to play it for you. Alright, now we're in tune. I'll give you a little sample of how it sounds. These old Yamahas. They have a fairly nice sound for, you know, the cost of them, and you know, they're fairly well built. Just a kind of side note about this guitar, Jerry was taking a look at it, and it's got really light bracing. You might be able to see the back bracing there is fairly light, but the top bracing is really light, you know, really thin braces. It's not really causing a problem, but it's just something to note. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching the finished work we did to this Yamaha. A little bit of setup we did. If you did enjoy it, a thumbs up would be much appreciated, and if you haven't already, subscribing would be really appreciated. Thanks for watching.